Hey everyone. We are so close to hitting 1,000 subscribers. Please smash that subscribe button and help our unveiled family reach our goal. Thanks to everyone who has already subscribed. We love you. Now to the video. I still don't know how I managed to stay calm through any of it, because when I replay that day in my head, every moment feels like it was recorded on fast forward. It didn't even feel like a date. It felt like walking into someone else's madness without knowing I'd stepped into the middle of it. And the weirdest part is that the whole thing started so harmless, so boring, that I didn't expect anything except maybe a dry conversation and an early Uber home. She messaged me first on the app. She seemed friendly, quick replies, a bit awkward but not in a scary way. More like she overthought everything she typed. She suggested a cafe near the high street because she said she didn't like loud places. Fair enough. I didn't want anything too formal either. So I agreed. I didn't overanalyze it at all. When I got there, I saw her sitting at a table next to the window, tapping her foot, staring outside like she was waiting for someone else. She smiled when I walked over, but her eyes kept drifting back to the street behind me. Every few minutes she'd lean slightly to look past me, like she was tracking every person walking by. At first I thought she was just socially nervous or maybe waiting for a friend to show up after our date. I tried to joke a bit to ease the tension, but she wasn't fully listening. She'd look at me for a second, nod, then glance back at the road. She kept fiddling with her phone too, opening it, closing it, checking the black screen like someone had messaged her but she didn't want me to see. The longer we sat there, the more I realized she wasn't paying attention to anything I said. Her body was in the cafe, but her mind felt like it was outside pacing the pavement. Every time a car slowed down, she tensed. Every time someone walked past the window, she tracked their movement. After about 15 minutes, she said she needed some air and asked if I wanted to walk with her to her car because she had something in the boot she wanted to show me. The sentence landed weirdly. I didn't know her. I didn't know what she could possibly need to show me from her car. But she sounded stressed, not creepy, so I said all right. As we walked down the street, her whole posture changed. She kept rubbing her hands together, glancing behind us more than she looked forward. I tried making light conversation, but she barely answered. She just kept saying this day had been crazy and she was tired and that people had been acting weird around her. I didn't know what that meant and she didn't explain. We turned into the car park behind the cafe. It wasn't busy, just a few cars scattered around. Her car was parked near the far end, a small silver hatchback with one headlight slightly fogged. As we walked closer, she slowed down a little, and something about the way she angled herself between me and the car made my chest feel tight. Like she didn't want me to see something yet. She pressed her key fob and the lights blinked. That's when I saw it. The faintest movement in the back seat. It was small, barely noticeable, but enough that my eyes focused instantly. A blanket was spread over the back seats, thick and dark, covering something. But the blanket shifted again. Not from the breeze. From someone underneath it. I stopped walking. She didn't. She kept talking, fast, rambling like she was trying to distract me. But my eyes were locked on the window now. And then I saw the shape clearly. An arm, a wrist, a hand holding something. A phone. A phone pointed at us. Someone was under the blanket filming. My stomach dropped to the ground. Everything in my body went cold at once and every hair on my arms stood up. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. My brain started firing warnings so fast I couldn't grab onto a single thought. She finally turned around when she realized I wasn't next to her. Her smile twitched. She followed my eyes to the back seat, then quickly stepped in front of the car door like she wanted to block it from me. She didn't say anything. Not one word of explanation. She just gave me this frozen stare like she was waiting to see what I'd do. Before I could even figure out how to react, before I could turn or run or shout, there was a sudden echo of heavy footsteps behind us. Fast, loud, getting closer. I spun around thinking it was a random person walking through the car park. It wasn't. 2 officers were sprinting towards us. I stepped back instinctively. She didn't. She jumped like she was about to bolt, but one officer grabbed her arm before she took 2 steps. The other officer went straight to the car, yanked the door open, and tore the blanket off the man hiding underneath. He dropped the phone immediately and tried to scramble out, but they dragged him out onto the concrete so quickly the whole car shook. The girls started shouting something about misunderstandings and just pranks and content, but the officers didn't listen. They were too busy pulling zip ties, telling her not to resist, telling the guy under the blanket to stay down. Everything was happening so fast that my thoughts couldn't keep up. I just stood there like I'd wandered onto the wrong set of some random chaotic movie scene. One officer walked over to me once they secured both of them and asked if I'd come with them voluntarily to give a statement. I said yes, still shocked. When I asked what just happened, the officer looked at me like he felt a bit sorry for me. He told me the girl and the guy in the car were already on bail for a stunt earlier in the week. They'd been staging kidnapping pranks, fake abductions, fake panic reactions, fake crisis scenarios, recording everything for viral videos. They'd lure dates into situations where it looked like something insane was happening to them, get the raw shock reaction on camera, then edit it for views. The officer said they'd already uploaded a few of the earlier ones before being forced to take them down. They were warned not to stage any more. They ignored it. Tonight was supposed to be another one. I wasn't a date to her. I was a prop, a reaction, a victim face for her channel. If I hadn't noticed the lump in the back seat or the camera under the blanket, I knew exactly what would have happened next. The guy would have jumped out. Someone would have grabbed me. She would have screamed. Someone would have pretended to get taken. The clip would have been edited into some fake trendy caught-on-camera nonsense with dramatic music and captions. Except it wouldn't have been funny for me. It would have been terrifying. And real. They took both of them away. The officers told me I got extremely lucky. And honestly, I felt sick thinking about how close I came to falling right into their setup. Now, every time someone suggests meeting near a car park or asks me to walk with them to their car for something in the boot, my chest goes numb instantly. No date should ever involve checking a backseat for movement, but now I do it without thinking.
I still think this whole thing feels like someone else's story, like I watched it happen instead of living it. But every time I walk past a cafe now, my mind drags me right back into that moment where everything flipped from normal to insane in seconds. And it all started with something so small that I didn't even register it as a red flag. I matched with this guy who said he worked night shifts. He kept going on about how his hours were all over the place, how he barely slept, how he was always tired but still trying to date because life was too short. He sounded relatable, kind of funny, and kind of exhausted in a way that made him seem more real than most people on these apps. So when he asked if I wanted to meet for a quick coffee before he went into work, I said fine. It was early evening, not dark yet, not busy but not empty. Perfect, safe timing. When I walked into the cafe and saw him sitting near the window, he looked pretty much the same as his pictures, tired eyes, scruffy hoodie, messy hair like he'd just rolled out of bed. I didn't get any weird vibe from him at all. If anything, he looked soft, harmless, the type of guy who apologizes if he bumps into a chair. We ordered drinks and sat down. He asked me stuff about my week, about what I liked to do, all normal first date things. But halfway through the conversation, I noticed something odd. Every time someone walked by with a handbag, his eyes followed it. Not in a creepy flirting way. More like he was scanning them. Studying them. Checking zips, how people held them, how close they were to the edge of the table. At first I thought maybe he worked in loss prevention or something. He said he worked night shifts, maybe he worked in security. I tried to brush it off. But then he did it again. And again. So many times that my brain stopped listening to what he was saying because I was too focused on how intensely he watched people's belongings. He kept tapping his foot too. Fast. Like he wanted to go somewhere but was forcing himself to stay put. And every time the cafe door opened, he glanced over his shoulder like he was checking if someone specific had walked in. I asked him casually what he did for work. He said something vague about loading vans and doing deliveries at weird hours. Nothing that explained the handbag staring. Nothing that made the tapping make sense either. He didn't expand, he didn't give details, just said he was always tired because of the shifts. Then he leaned forward like he was about to tell me something deeper, but instead he said he wanted fresh air and asked if I wanted to walk around the block. I didn't want to seem rude, so I agreed even though something in me felt weirdly tense. We walked outside, talking about random things again, but he kept looking around. His eyes were jumping from person to person, from bag to pocket to people's hands. I joked in my head that he looked like he was doing a security scan, but there was nothing funny about how fast he was observing everyone. Then it happened so quickly that my brain barely processed it until it was already done. We were passing by a woman who had her purse hanging loosely from her shoulder. She wasn't paying attention, just chatting to someone on the phone. And out of nowhere, like an animal reacting to movement, he sprinted. Not jogged. Not ran politely. Full sprint. Straight at her. Before she even turned around, he snatched her purse off her shoulder so hard she stumbled. My whole body froze. For a second I was sure this had to be a misunderstanding, like maybe he knew her or something. But then he kept running. Fast. Like he trained for this. I stood there like an idiot, my mouth open, my brain trying to catch up. And before I could stop myself, I started running too, more out of panic and instinct than actually trying to catch him. The woman was screaming behind us. People were turning their heads. Cars were slowing down. It felt like everything exploded at once. He darted around the corner and I followed just a few steps behind, not even knowing why. Maybe I wanted to see where he went. Maybe I wanted to tell someone what direction he took. Maybe my brain just glitched and decided running was the only option. As soon as I reached the corner, I saw police coming from the opposite direction. Running. Fast. They didn't even hesitate. 2 officers tackled him into the ground so hard that the purse flew out of his hands and slid across the pavement. He screamed something I'll never forget. He kept shouting that I was his driver. Over and over. Pointing at me. Telling them I was supposed to pick him up. Telling them I helped him. My whole chest dropped into my stomach. I started yelling no, telling them I didn't know him, that I just met him, that I had no idea what he was doing. I could barely get my words out because everything was happening too fast and too loud. One officer grabbed the purse while the other cuffed him. He kept kicking, twisting, shouting lies like his life depended on it. He swore he met me before. Swore I was meant to take him to a car waiting nearby. Swore I knew everything. I felt like I couldn't breathe. People were staring at me. The woman whose purse he stole was crying and shaking. The police looked at me like they weren't sure what to believe yet. When they separated us, one officer pulled me aside and asked me everything from the start. It took me so long to explain because I couldn't even put the words together properly. My throat felt tight, my hands were shaking, my brain wouldn't settle. The officer finally told me the guy had been doing this for a while. Running quick grabs right before his supposed shift. Taking purses, wallets, phones. Always sprinting. Always trying to make it look like he had someone waiting in a car so he could escape fast. They'd been trying to catch him for weeks. And tonight he used me like a prop. He wanted a date so he could blend in. So he'd look harmless sitting in a cafe. So no one would clock him waiting for the perfect target. And when he ran, he wanted me to panic and follow him so it looked like I was part of it. He didn't choose me randomly. He chose me because he thought I looked like someone who wouldn't think too hard. I watched them put him in the back of the police car while he still tried to shout lies at them. But he wasn't shouting confidently anymore. More desperate. More angry. More caught. The woman got her purse back. I gave my statement. And I walked home in this weird fog where everything felt too bright and too loud. I still don't go on coffee dates unless I've stalked the guy online for at least a week. And anytime someone mentions night shifts, my stomach tightens without warning.
I swear this is one of those things that still feels fake when I talk about it, like I'm mixing up someone else's memory with mine. But the whole night is stuck in my head in this weird bright way, like every detail was recorded. And the start was so normal that it still annoys me how easily I walked into it. I wasn't even excited for the date. I just said yes because my week was long and my brain was tired and meeting someone felt better than scrolling on my phone until 3 a.m. She looked normal in her pictures. Pretty but not in a way that felt intimidating. Smiley. Outgoing. She messaged first, which made me feel like she actually wanted to meet instead of treating it like some competition. We agreed on a restaurant that was busy enough to feel safe but not loud enough to make everything awkward. And I remember thinking as I got ready that this might be the one rare date that doesn't end in a plot twist. When I got there, she was already sitting at the table. She waved at me with this huge grin, the type of grin that made me feel like she already knew me. But the first thing I noticed wasn't the smile. It was the bright red hair. Like bright red. Curly. Very different from her pictures. But I just assumed she dyed it recently. Loads of people change their hair overnight. I didn't think about it after the first few seconds. We talked for a bit and she was loud, confident, super quick with jokes. She didn't even let silence exist for more than 2 seconds. It was kind of refreshing because I didn't need to carry the conversation. Then halfway through her story about some job she used to have, she excused herself to go to the bathroom. When she came back, she wasn't red-haired anymore. Her hair was now jet black. Straight. Long. Like a totally different person. She didn't explain it. She sat right back down, picked up where she left off, and acted like nothing changed. My brain froze for a second trying to process it. I stared at her hair probably too obviously because she laughed and said she liked switching things up. The way she said it was so casual that it almost made me feel stupid for even noticing. She talked fast, too fast sometimes, and while she talked, she kept glancing over my shoulder. Not in a nervous way, more like she was checking something. I tried to ignore it and listen to her talk about random things like favorite foods, random childhood stories, how she hated cold weather. But then she did it again, looked behind me for a bit too long. I pretended to fix my sleeve just so I could turn slightly and see what she was looking at. There were 2 couples sitting behind me at different tables. They were just eating, talking, doing normal couple things. Nothing special. When I turned back, she smiled again, but it didn't sit right this time. A few minutes later, she excused herself again to go to the bathroom. When she returned again, her hair was blonde. Short. Wavy. Obviously a wig. No way someone switches styles that quickly without some kind of magic. She was acting like it was nothing though, like swapping hair mid-date was the same as reapplying lip balm. I laughed nervously, pretending it was funny, but inside my stomach felt tight. I didn't know whether she was messing with me or if this was just her personality. But something about it didn't feel quirky. It felt planned. And then she did something that made everything start clicking into place. While she sat down, she held her phone under the table. Not like texting. The angle was weird. Then she lifted it slightly, pretending she was checking something. But the camera lens was pointed behind me. At the couples. She tapped something on her phone quickly. Then put it away and went right back to smiling like she hadn't just done something shady. I didn't say anything, but my brain was spinning. Who changes wigs during a first date and takes sneaky photos of strangers? She kept talking, but my mind wasn't listening anymore. I kept watching her eyes flick up behind me every few minutes. She wasn't interested in me. Not fully. She was watching the couples. She wasn't here for the date. She was using it. When the waiter came over with the bill, she suddenly looked tense for the first time. Proper tense. Glancing behind me faster. Checking her phone. Her voice got quieter, like she was listening for something. Then out of nowhere, 2 officers walked into the restaurant. Not loud, not storming in, but with clear purpose. They scanned the room slowly, and when their eyes landed on her, both of them started walking toward our table. She saw them. Her whole face switched. It was quick, like a mask falling off. She grabbed her bag and stood up fast like she was going to run, but they reached her before she got 2 steps away. One of them told her to keep her hands visible. The whole restaurant froze. Everyone stared. She didn't look scared. She looked annoyed. Like she'd been caught doing something small, not serious. Then they started asking her questions I could hear parts of. Something about reports. Something about breaching privacy laws. Something about using dates as cover. One officer turned to me and asked if I came with her. I said yes, but barely knew her. And then he told me in this low, calm voice that she'd been doing this for months. Using different wigs and fake dates to blend into restaurants while taking pictures of couples for clients. Clients who paid her to catch cheating husbands. She wasn't just taking pictures. She was gathering intel. Watching body language. Tracking movements. Sending photos to clients who wanted proof. And sometimes those clients weren't stable. Sometimes things escalated. They'd had complaints. Warnings. They'd been watching her for a while. I stood there stunned, still picturing her switching hair like she was swapping masks between missions. It all made sense. The constant glancing. The sneaky photos. The too fast talking. She wasn't getting to know me, she was covering her real target. When they let her out, she didn't look at me once. Not even a fake sorry. She just kept her head down while the blonde wig shifted as she walked, like it wasn't even glued on properly. The staff comped my drink because they felt bad. I stayed sitting for a bit because my legs felt weird, like they weren't ready to stand yet. I replayed everything over and over. Every laugh. Every glance. Every wig. Dating is supposed to be awkward sometimes. But I never thought someone would use me like a prop just so they could sit near strangers and spy on their relationships. I still don't trust anyone with too many hairstyles in their pictures.
I wasn't even supposed to go out that night. That's the part that annoys me every time I think about it. I had planned to stay home, order food, and watch some random series I wasn't even that interested in. But boredom is dangerous, and when this guy messaged me asking if I wanted to go bowling, I said yes way too quickly. He'd been messaging me for a few days, and honestly he just came across like one of those shy, slightly awkward guys who overthinks every text they send. Nothing rude, nothing creepy, just stiff. I thought maybe he'd relax in person. He chose the bowling place because he said it wasn't too loud and we'd be able to talk. That made sense. When I arrived, he was already standing inside waiting for me. He looked exactly like his pictures, which was a relief. He waved awkwardly, kind of half lifting his hand like he wasn't sure if he should commit to the full wave. At first everything was normal. We paid for the lane, got our shoes, found a ball that wasn't cracked, and started playing. He wasn't good at bowling, which actually made him seem more human because he laughed every time the ball swerved into the gutter. He asked me questions, smiled sometimes, and didn't make weird jokes. I remember thinking that maybe he was just socially rusty. The only thing that stood out was that he kept looking at my shoes a lot. Not my face, not my outfit, not the lane. My shoes. The rental ones sitting next to our bench. I thought maybe he had a thing about germs or didn't like bowling shoes, so I didn't overthink it. We played for a while, ordered drinks, chilled. Nothing felt off until I reached down to put my own shoes back on. I grabbed the left shoe first, but the second I turned it towards me, something inside caught the light weirdly. I don't know why I noticed it, maybe because my brain zoomed in before I even knew something was wrong. There was tape inside the heel. Not normal smooth tape, clear tape pushed down over something. Something tiny. I felt my whole chest go tight as I tilted the shoe toward me. It wasn't dust. It wasn't a sticker. It was a tiny camera lens. The smallest one I'd ever seen. Hidden right where your ankle sits. I froze so fast it felt like the whole room stopped with me. I didn't say anything. I didn't gasp. I didn't move. My mind just replayed every second of the night like someone scrolling a timeline, trying to read all the moments he looked at my shoes. Suddenly every awkward smile, every time he asked if the shoes fit, every time he told me to use the same pair just in case they ran out in my size made sense in the worst way possible. I put the shoe down carefully like it was dangerous. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it louder than the bowling alley music. I stood up slowly, trying not to make it obvious, and told him I needed to go grab something from the counter. My voice sounded fake even to myself. He stepped in front of me. Not aggressively. Not yelling. Just moved into the space like he'd been planning to stop me the second I tried to leave. His face wasn't smiling anymore. He didn't look shy or awkward. He just looked blank. Completely blank, like he'd switched off whatever fake personality he'd been pretending to have. I stepped to the side, and he stepped to the side too. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. His whole body said no. And in that moment, every instinct in me screamed that I had to get away without making him panic. I glanced around trying to spot staff, trying to see if anyone noticed. But no one was close, and the music was loud and the lights were flickering like they always do in bowling alleys. I told him I just needed air. He shook his head once. Slow. Like I wasn't allowed. My stomach dropped so hard I felt dizzy. I turned and started walking anyway. Not running, walking, fast, pretending I wasn't scared even though I felt like I could pass out. He followed right behind me. Not grabbing me, but definitely following. His footsteps matched mine exactly. In my head, I kept thinking he was going to drag me somewhere or block me again near the door. I kept picturing him taking out the camera, pulling me aside, doing something I couldn't predict. But before I even reached the exit, 2 staff members came walking towards us from the side hallway. They were both looking straight at him. Not me. Him. One of them said something sharp, too far for me to read their lips, but whatever it was made him stop walking immediately. The staff member pointed at the office door. The guy froze, then suddenly darted towards the exit like he was trying to bolt. That's when everything exploded into chaos. The staff ran after him. Someone shouted. Someone else ran to the front desk. People turned their heads. I backed away so fast I hit the vending machine. A few seconds later, one of the staff came to me and told me I needed to stay inside until police arrived. Police. My mind could barely keep up. I told them about the camera in the shoe, but they already knew something was wrong before that. They said they saw him on CCTV earlier acting strange around the shoes shelf, taking a long time picking mine, switching out sizes even though he didn't ask me anything about which ones I wanted. They thought maybe he was stealing something at first. But then they saw him slip something inside one of the shoes while I was picking a bowling ball. They didn't know what it was until I told them. The police arrived fast. Faster than I've ever seen. They searched the area around the car park and found him behind one of the cars kneeling on the ground. He wasn't running anymore. He wasn't hiding. He was pulling the SD card out of a tiny black device he'd already pried from inside the shoe he grabbed when he ran out. When they arrested him, he didn't fight back. He didn't apologize. He just stared straight ahead like he did earlier when he blocked me, like his mind wasn't even in his body. One of the officers came back inside and asked if I wanted to sit down. I didn't. My legs felt like they weren't really working, but I couldn't sit. I kept thinking about how close I came to walking out with him still behind me. I kept thinking about how if the staff didn't notice him acting weird on CCTV, he might have gotten away with the card. The staff handed me my actual shoes back and took the rental ones. They said they'd give the camera to the officers. I nodded, but I couldn't talk properly. My throat felt blocked. I walked out of there feeling like the air outside was heavier than inside. I kept thinking about all the times I joked about bowling dates being harmless and goofy. Now I can't even look at a pair of rental shoes without remembering that tap of clear tape inside the heel and the tiny round lens staring back at me. I don't care how dramatic it sounds, I bring my own shoes everywhere now. I still think about how normal that day started, and how fast it switched into something that felt straight out of someone else's nightmare. I wasn't even planning to meet anyone that night. I'd had a long week, I was tired, and honestly I just wanted to relax. But this guy I'd been talking to kept messaging me, saying he wasn't trying to make it formal or anything, just a chilled night with movies and food. He sounded harmless, and he kept saying he didn't want to go out anywhere crowded. At the time, that actually sounded nice. I convinced myself it was fine because loads of people have casual meetups at someone's place and nothing happens. He lived about 15 minutes away, not in some scary area or anything. Just a normal block of flats you'd barely look at twice. When I reached his building, he buzzed me up straight away, no waiting around, no weird pauses. The corridor smelled like someone was cooking something strong, and his door was already open when I turned the corner. He leaned on it like he was trying to look relaxed, but he actually just looked like he didn't know what to do with his hands. His flat wasn't messy, but it also wasn't clean. It had that vibe of someone who tidy ups only the surface when they know someone's coming. The lights were a bit dim, the sofa had a blanket randomly thrown over it, and I noticed a stack of takeaway containers on his counter that looked like they'd been there for days. But nothing made me want to run out. I've seen worse at friends' places. We talked a bit, nothing deep. He kept telling me to relax and make myself comfortable, like he'd read some script online. I sat on the sofa while he went to pour drinks in the kitchen. Everything felt fine except for this weird energy that made me feel like he was watching my reactions too closely, like I was being scored on something. After a bit, I asked to use the bathroom. He pointed down the hallway and said something about the light switch being outside the door. Nothing strange there, so I went. The second I stepped into the bathroom, I swear the whole vibe of the flat changed instantly. I wasn't even looking for anything. I just turned to close the door and that's when I saw the photos. Not on the mirror. Not on the counter. On the wall behind the door. Rows of pictures. Printed. Slightly glossy. All different sizes. All of him standing next to different women at different places, outside restaurants, in parks, at train stations, in what looked like living rooms. Every single one had the same weird thing in common. Every woman's face was covered with tape. Not stickers. Not scribbles. Tape. Thick strips of brown packing tape pressed over their faces like he was trying to erase who they were but still keep the memory that they were there. My body went cold in this slow, heavy way. Not panic, more like disbelief. I walked closer without even thinking. I wasn't imagining it. Some of the photos were recent because I saw dates printed in the corner. He'd been meeting a lot of girls. And for each one, he covered their face like a glitch in a game or like he didn't want them to exist in the picture anymore. I felt sick. Proper sick. Not the kind of sick where you bend over and breathe heavy. Just this numb heaviness in my chest that made me forget how to move for a second. I didn't want to stay in there. I didn't want him to know I'd seen it. I tried to fix my face before opening the door so I wouldn't look scared. When I stepped back into the hallway, he wasn't in the living room anymore. Instead, I heard him in the kitchen talking to someone. His tone was low and rushed, like he didn't want me to hear. Then he said he needed to take a quick call outside. He didn't ask, he didn't explain, he just grabbed his keys and walked out the door of his flat, leaving me alone inside. That was the moment I realized something was seriously off. No one leaves someone they barely know alone in their place unless they're either completely clueless or hiding something. The flat felt too quiet now. Like everything I ignored earlier suddenly became loud. The takeaway containers. The dim light. The anxious way he hovered around me when I arrived. And those pictures. Always those pictures. I tried to think if I should leave. I didn't want to run out and bump into him if he was standing in the hallway. I didn't want him to come back and find me snooping. I didn't want to stay either. My chest felt tight and my breathing wasn't steady anymore. Then someone knocked on the door. Not a light knock. Not a neighbor. A solid knock that meant business. I froze for a second because I thought he was back. But then I heard someone say something through the door, something about police. It didn't register in my head at first because everything felt foggy. I looked through the gap in the chain lock without opening the door fully. 2 officers were standing there. My stomach dropped. I opened the door because honestly, what else was I supposed to do? They didn't even hesitate. They asked me straight away if I lived there. I told them no. They told me to step out of the flat and stand to the side of the hallway. Their tone wasn't angry. It wasn't loud. It was the type of voice someone uses when they're dealing with something serious and don't have time for confusion. One officer went into the flat. The other stayed in the hall with me and asked when I arrived. I told him everything quickly, that I was on a date, that the guy had just stepped out, and that I didn't know what was going on. My voice kept cracking because everything felt unreal. The officer told me the girl he dated last week had flagged this exact address. She'd reported something strange after leaving his place. She said she saw documents that didn't belong to him, different names, different birthdays, hidden in a drawer that was half open. She thought they were stolen passports. She wasn't sure if they were real, but it scared her enough to send in a tip. And apparently, that tip wasn't the only one. Other girls he met had said similar things but never followed through on reporting him. While the officer explained everything, his radio went off and the other one called him inside. They found something. Something that made both of them move quicker. I didn't see what it was. I didn't want to. They asked me to stay by the stairs while they secured the flat. More officers came up after a few minutes, and one of them asked if I had any belongings inside. I shook my head. I just wanted to leave. They told me he wasn't outside anymore. He'd run the second he saw a police car pull up, like he knew exactly why they were there. They told me he'd been meeting different women every week and using the dates as a cover while he kept stolen documents hidden in his flat. I kept thinking about the taped faces. How he erased every girl from the pictures but kept himself in them. Like the women were just props. Extras. Replaceable. I left the building with my hands shaking, not cold shaking, more like my nerves were buzzing and didn't know where to settle. I didn't sleep properly that night. I kept seeing the pictures every time I closed my eyes. And sometimes, even now, when I go into a bathroom in someone's place, I check the walls without meaning to. I guess part of me is scared I'll see my own face taped over one day. I swear this one still feels recent even though months have passed, because every time I go near a coffee shop now, my brain jumps straight back to that day. And the weirdest part is that nothing about the start even hinted at how messed up it was gonna get. It started so normal it's actually crazy thinking about how quickly it switched. I matched with this guy online, nothing dramatic, nothing weird, he just seemed chilled and honestly a bit boring. And boring felt safe at the time. I wasn't looking for fireworks. I just wanted a simple meetup where no one acted strange. We planned to grab coffee on a weekend afternoon, which felt harmless enough. Public place, bright daylight, loads of people around. I didn't get any weird vibes from him while we were texting. He used emojis, made jokes, asked normal questions. If anything, he seemed like one of those overly polite guys who apologizes for everything even when there's nothing to apologize for. So when I walked into the cafe and saw him at the table already, nothing felt off at first. He stood up when he saw me, smiled, and did that awkward wave people do when they're nervous. Everything was fine for maybe 10 minutes. We talked about random stuff. I asked about his job, he asked about mine. And then he started checking his watch. Not once or twice. Properly checking it. Over and over. And it wasn't discreet either. He'd look down, tap the side of it, glance behind me, then look down again. It wasn't like he had somewhere to be. He told me he had the whole day free. But his eyes kept moving, like he was waiting for someone to walk in. At first, I thought maybe he was just socially awkward. Nervous. Maybe he was timing something in his head. I didn't want to judge him too quickly. But then he did it again, and I started feeling uncomfortable. It didn't look like nerves anymore. It looked like expectation. Every few minutes he'd throw in a random line like he was trying to distract from it. He kept saying things like it was weirdly busy today or that he wasn't usually this distracted. But he still kept checking that stupid watch. After a while, I couldn't pretend I didn't notice it. It was too obvious. My mind started making up scenarios. I thought maybe he had some ex who turns up at places, or maybe he had beef with someone. Or maybe he was scared someone was following him. He didn't look scared though. He looked excited. Like he was waiting for a plot twist. We finished our drinks and he suggested walking around for a bit. I didn't want to make it more awkward, so I agreed. The second we stepped outside, he checked his watch again and then looked across the street like he was expecting something to happen right there. I swear, the more I watched him, the more my stomach felt tight. It was like there was another part of this date that I wasn't told about. We walked down the street and talked about small things, but he wasn't fully present. Every few steps he'd turn his head. Not sneaky. Not subtle. Full head turn, checking behind us like we were being trailed. And then I noticed them. 2 men walking a few meters behind us. Not dressed weird, not standing out, just 2 guys who looked like they were pretending to blend in. At first, I thought I was being dramatic. Loads of people walk behind other people. But every time we turned a corner, they turned too. Slow. Steady. Always the same distance. My heart started racing, but I didn't want to make it obvious. I looked at the guy next to me and realized he had this smug expression on his face. Not scared. Not confused. Proud. Like he knew they were there and liked it. That's when my chest went cold. He wanted me to notice them. I didn't say anything out loud. I didn't want to make myself a target if this was actually something deep. I just listened to him ramble about some TV show while he glanced behind us like he was waiting for applause. At one point he leaned in slightly, like he was about to say something dramatic, but he didn't. He just smiled like he was living in his own little movie. We reached a crossing and I slowed down, pretending to look through my bag for something. The 2 guys behind us slowed down as well. They weren't trying to hide it anymore. The tension was building in this weird invisible bubble around all of us. When the guy I was with stepped forward to cross the road, one of the men behind us suddenly stepped in front of him. Not aggressively, not shouting, just blocking the way. The other one approached from the side. Everything happened too fast. The guy I was with didn't even look shocked. He looked caught. Like he'd been expecting this moment but hoped it wouldn't arrive yet. The 2 men flashed something at him, small and quick, and told him to stay where he was. They didn't yell. They didn't make a scene. They handled it so calmly that most people around us didn't even notice anything happening. One of them turned to me and quietly asked if I was with him. I told them yes, but I had no idea what was going on. And then they told me something that made my whole body feel like it switched off for a second. They said he wasn't being followed because he had a stalker. He'd been pretending that. He was being followed because he was already under investigation. And the 2 men weren't random strangers. They were undercover detectives. They had been trailing him for weeks. He wasn't some innocent guy scared of someone creeping around his life. He was part of a group that targeted empty homes. He'd been involved in a home invasion ring, timing when people weren't inside, scouting neighborhoods, tracking routines, pretending to have stalkers to get sympathy from dates so he could check if they lived alone or worked late. Everything he did during the date made sense in the worst way possible. He wasn't distracted by nerves. He was waiting to see if they'd catch him in front of me. He was checking his watch because he knew they usually tracked him from a distance. He kept looking behind us because he could feel them getting closer. He was using me as a cover. A distraction. A normal girl to make him look harmless while detectives gathered more evidence. And I had no idea. They took him away without causing a scene. One of the detectives told me quietly that I wasn't in danger but should go straight home. I walked fast, trying to process everything. The whole date twisted from weird to terrifying in minutes. I kept replaying every second in my head, trying to figure out if he ever actually saw me as a person or if I was just another part of his plan. I still don't like walking out of cafes with strangers behind me. I don't trust people who stare at their watches too much either. And every time I pass someone on the street who looks like they're blending in a bit too well, I wonder if they're actually watching someone else.
Two, the rooftop setup. I'm not gonna lie, this whole thing started because I was bored out of my mind one weekend and thought meeting someone new would distract me. I wasn't expecting anything serious. I just wanted something chill, someone to talk to, someone who didn't make the whole dating thing feel like a job interview. So when this girl messaged me first, I thought, cool, why not? She wasn't weird in her photos and she didn't type like someone trying too hard. She just seemed normal. Proper normal. And that's exactly why I went. We talked for a few days before meeting. Nothing deep, nothing that made me feel like she was pushing anything. She kept saying she liked views, sunsets, rooftops, random stuff like that. I didn't think it meant anything. I just put it down as one of her hobbies. Everyone likes rooftops now, posting skyline pics like they're influencers or something, so I didn't question it. It wasn't strange until later, but at the start it all felt light. We arranged to meet in the evening because she said the view at her building was nicer when the lights in the city started turning on. She kept saying she couldn't wait to show me her view. Over and over. Like that one sentence was her whole personality. I didn't think it was a red flag at the time. I just thought she really liked sunsets or whatever. When I got to her area, it actually didn't look like a place with a nice view. Just plain buildings, nothing special, nothing worth going upstairs for. A lot of boring flats stacked together, balconies full of drying clothes and plants that were dead but still hanging there. I didn't understand what view she was talking about, but I said nothing because I didn't want to look like I was judging the place. She met me outside the front entrance, smiling way too big like she was excited about something. Not excited to see me, more like she had something planned. I didn't clock it at first. I just thought she was sociable. We talked a bit while she unlocked the door with her fob. She didn't even suggest going to her flat. She just said we should go straight up to the roof. And she said it again that she couldn't wait to show me her view. That was probably the first time I felt something was off. The way she phrased it wasn't normal excitement. It sounded rehearsed. Like she'd said the same line 100 times. We got into the lift and she stood in the corner like she was waiting for something. The silence in the lift made me more aware of how strange she was acting. She wasn't talking. She wasn't smiling anymore. She looked like she was focusing on something in her head. And the higher the lift went, the more it felt like she wasn't taking me to see anything. She was taking me to something. When we reached the top floor, the doors opened onto this tiny landing with a metal door that led to the stairs to the roof. It had paint peeling off it and scratches near the handle. It looked like it had been kicked open before. She pushed it with this weird confidence like she owned the whole building. I followed because at that point I didn't know if turning around would make everything more awkward. The stairwell was dim and echoey. Every step we took sounded like it belonged in some horror video online. She walked ahead of me fast, barely looking back. I kept thinking I'd see some magical skyline the second we reached the top. But when she got to the roof door, she paused for a second. She didn't open it straight away. She glanced behind her like she was checking something. Then she pushed the door open. Cold air hit me straight away. The roof was empty, quiet, kind of decent. Not an amazing view, but better than the street level. I stepped out and looked around. She stood there like she was waiting for my reaction. But I wasn't impressed enough for whatever she wanted, so she told me to follow her to the far side where she said the best angle was. As we were walking, something in the corner of my eye caught my attention. The stair door behind us wasn't fully closed. It was slightly open, just a tiny bit. And I swear I saw movement behind it. Not a shadow, not light, proper movement. Like someone pulling back. My whole chest tightened. I tried not to show it, but my eyes kept drifting toward it. The gap wasn't big, but I saw part of a sleeve and something black in someone's hand. I slowed down and let her walk ahead so I could look properly. And that's when I saw it clearly. A guy. Hiding. Pressed against the wall behind the door. Holding a camera. Not a phone. A full camera with a grip. Pointed toward the roof. Pointed toward me. He didn't move, but I knew he saw me see him. The whole moment stretched out weirdly, like time slowed. My legs felt heavy and light at the same time, like they didn't know what to do. I turned toward her, and suddenly everything she said earlier made sense. The view, the rushing to the roof, the weird rehearsed lines, the strange silence. She wasn't bringing me up here to show anything. She was setting up a situation. I didn't want to panic. I didn't want to run because I didn't know if there were more people hiding. I don't know how I managed to stay calm, but I told her I needed to go downstairs for a second because I thought I dropped my wallet. She didn't argue. She didn't even look confused. She just stood there staring at me like she was waiting to see what I'd do. The second I stepped back into the stairwell, I went fast. Too fast. I practically flew down the stairs. I didn't hear anyone following, but I didn't stop to check. I didn't look behind me until I was outside the building and halfway down the street. I kept looking over my shoulder thinking they'd run after me, but no one did. Later that night, police knocked on my door. I didn't even know how they found me that quickly. They said they needed to ask me about a girl from the building I went to. They told me she and a few people were filming clips of fake break-ins, fake hostage stuff, fake threats. But the twist was they were using real people without telling them, recording their reactions, then selling the footage online for money. I didn't even know what to say. I just sat there thinking about how I could have been in one of those videos. How my face would have ended up online panicking or running or reacting to something I didn't sign up for. That rooftop wasn't a date spot. It was a setup. I still walk fast whenever I'm near unfamiliar buildings at night. And I don't trust anyone who says they want to show me a view anymore.
I never thought I'd get myself into something like this, but the whole thing still plays in my head like some long messed up video clip I can't delete. It started normal, the way a lot of these things do. I was bored one night scrolling through this dating page that felt like Facebook Marketplace but for people instead of furniture. Everyone on there posted these corny little bios, random selfies, and stupid questions under each other's posts like some kind of bootleg community. I wasn't even planning to meet anyone, but this guy kept popping up on my feed. He didn't look weird. He didn't look like someone I'd regret meeting. He had this kind smile in all his pictures, like he never raised his voice in his life. That's probably why I even replied to him in the first place. We talked for a few days, nothing deep, nothing that made me feel like I needed to screenshot anything for my friends. Just normal things. He kept saying he liked down-to-earth people and that he didn't mess with nightlife or fake stuff. I honestly thought he was one of those guys who never leaves his flat except for groceries. Maybe that should have been a red flag, but I didn't think much of it. Everyone's antisocial these days. He asked me to come over to his flat for a chilled evening. Normally, I don't go to people's flats that quick, but he seemed harmless and the idea of just sitting somewhere and talking sounded better than another dry meetup at some random coffee shop. So I said fine. I didn't think twice about it. The day I went, I wasn't feeling jumpy or nervous. I treated it like visiting a friend. The area wasn't bad. Just one of those tall, slightly old buildings with balconies full of dying plants and people smoking outside like it's their full-time job. I took the lift up and kept thinking about how my makeup was probably fading because the weather was humid. That was my biggest worry. I swear I wish that was the only thing that went wrong. He opened the door the second I knocked, like he was standing right behind it waiting. That threw me off a little, but he just smiled and stepped back to let me in. His flat looked normal. Small. Clean enough. Quiet. I guess that's why the next thing I saw didn't register properly in my head at first. On the kitchen table, right by the wall, there were 3 takeaway bags. Neat. Lined up. Folded at the top. And my name was written on every single one. Properly spelled. Same handwriting. Same pen. For a second I thought maybe I read it wrong. Maybe it wasn't my name. Maybe they were for someone else. But no. It was definitely my name. First and last. Exactly the way it's written on my Uber Eats profile. I asked him what that was about, but not out loud. I didn't want to hear myself say the words. I just stood there staring at them like some frozen statue while he casually walked past me and sat on his sofa like nothing was weird. Then the creepy part hit me. The bags weren't fresh. I could tell by the way they looked slightly cold, the way the paper wasn't crisp anymore. One of them had the exact logo of the place I ordered from last Thursday when it was raining. Another one matched the place I ordered from after work 2 weeks ago on a random Wednesday. I remembered because that meal came late, and I was annoyed the whole night. It felt like my stomach turned over. I didn't even have to think hard. There was only one way he could have known all of that. He'd been tracking my orders. Not guessing them. Not stalking my socials. Tracking. As in he knew exactly what I ordered and when. And he kept all the bags like some twisted collection. My whole body went weird inside. Not shaky, just numb. Like every thought I normally have shut off at the same time. I didn't want to look scared because I didn't know how he'd react. I didn't want to bolt for the door because I didn't know if he'd block me. So I just stood there pretending I was looking at his flat. I tried to act normal even though my brain was screaming at me. Then I heard something outside. Not something small like footsteps. Proper stomps. People running in the hallway. Loud bangs. A man shouting from far away. Then another yell from someone else. I looked at him and he looked way too calm. He didn't even get up. The banging got louder. Closer. And then this heavy hit slammed into a door down the corridor. I knew it wasn't his door yet, but it was definitely coming. All of a sudden, the whole building felt like it was breathing fast. There were boots, shouting, radios, all sorts of noise that had nothing to do with our situation. I stepped back on instinct, away from him and closer to the exit. My hand was already reaching for the handle even though I didn't know where I thought I was going. The door across the hall burst open first. I heard officers yelling and someone screaming. I heard the crack of something breaking. Then more boots in the hallway. Before I could even think about moving, his door flew open from the outside and a bunch of officers rushed in shouting at him to get on the ground. I jumped so hard I nearly fell into his kitchen counter. One of the officers grabbed me by my arm and pulled me out of the way. I didn't even understand what was happening. I didn't know if I was in trouble, if he was in trouble, or if there was someone else in the building they were after. Outside in the hallway, everything was chaos. Neighbors sticking their heads out. Cops shouting numbers into radios. More officers dragging boxes out of another flat down the hall. When one of them finally talked to me, she asked me how I knew him and if I ever gave him access to my accounts. I told her no, obviously not. I didn't even know him properly. She told me they'd been investigating him and a few others for months because they'd been sneaking into people's accounts through some messed up tracking setup. They monitored women's food orders to figure out when they'd be home alone and when they'd be out. It sounded like some thriller movie plot, but it was real. He wasn't the only one doing it, but his flat was one of the main places they watched. I didn't even speak. My throat felt tight. The officer just kept explaining while I stared at the floor like an idiot. I couldn't believe I was in that flat minutes before the raid, staring at my old food bags like trophies. I walked out of that building with this weird heavy feeling in my chest. Not scared. Not crying. Just sick. Like my head was too full and empty at the same time. I still can't order food without checking the app twice. And I still see those bags lined up on the table every time I think about him.